everything about the facets of CSR impact the perception of luxury.
Okay, I'm going to get my, you can get going with that. We live in a world where we're now talking about sustainable development. We're not talking about CSR anymore. And that's why, CSR is what's on your website, but sustainable development is what we're doing as a globe. And so I'm wearing my sustainable development pin from the United Nations, because 169 member nations of the United Nations, of the UN, have adopted the agenda, the 2030 agenda, which means by the year 2030, we better do something about the planet we're living on, or we're not going to have a planet to live on. We are up against planetary boundaries. We're polluting our water, we're messing up our air, we've got CO2, we've got hungry people, we've got war, we've got instability, we have child labor, we have hunger. That's what the context of luxury is working in. All businesses and all of our lives are wound up in sustainable development, because these are the boundaries that we are up against. So that's what we have to pay attention to, not just philanthropic giving. I don't buy it, and that's why we've taken a completely different approach. So the 2030 agenda sets out 17 sustainable development goals. And you hear people talking about the SDGs. And so I'm going to take some time now to set the context of sustainable development and sustainability, because it's not just about these ideas of, well, we give away the proceeds from this kind of watch that we make, and we're good corporate citizens. It's not that anymore, because if that's all we do, we won't have a planet to live on, and nobody's going to be buying luxury goods. So I want you to understand, and what I have come to understand and kind of love about this topic about sustainability, is that we're working towards an inclusive, equitable future for all of humanity. And we need a guide for the future course of economic, social, and environmental development. So remember that in luxury, it's a €1 trillion industry, and there are successes and gaps in strategy that will financially impact how we do as luxury purchasers and luxury sellers. So, for example, in the Sustainable Development Goals, all businesses, all academics, all governments, all NGOs, all individuals, every business is working in this context of sustainable development. You can't ignore it, okay? So the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them with 169 targets and 230 indicators, will, by the year 2030, the aim is to remove poverty from the planet, to eliminate poverty. It's not just an idea. There are things that we can do, luxury businesses included. We are doing something about removing hunger from the planet. We are coming up with means of growing crops around the world, and this does have something to do with luxury, you'll see, because we don't want to pollute the aquifers with the cotton that we're growing for our organic shirts that we're making at Alexander McQueen. So we're doing something about hunger, and you can see how these start to interrelate. We want to do something about building healthy lives. That's SDG 3. Healthy lives, promoting well-being at all ages, reducing death from hazardous chemicals in air, water, and soil. That has something to do with luxury, because when we produce, we don't want to produce using chemicals and polluting the air and the water. When we grow cotton, or when we tan hides, or when we grow cattle to use their hides, or pythons for fancy purses. SDG 4 is about providing quality education around the world. So wherever our beautiful, raw, natural resources are coming from, for the gorgeous things that we buy in the luxury industry, what are we doing about the people in the area? Are we impacting those in the vicinity of the places where we take those beautiful natural products? Gender equality. Do we have women working in our boardrooms? We do at LVMH, we do at Caring. We have to make sure that all along the supply chain, we're doing something about gender equality. Same thing with clean water and sanitation. Ensuring the availability of and sustainable management of water resources and sanitation for all. Addressing water scarcity. So if you're growing cotton, for example, for those organic cotton shirts and beautiful dresses, are you doing so in areas that are not water stressed? Are you putting pesticides on the cotton plants or not? And so that's why luxury goods have a lot more to do with sustainable development than just CSR. CSR is just there. It's sustainable development brought down to the corporate level, but it's a bigger issue than that. So I'm going to talk to you about consumer perception of luxury brands in an era of sustainable development. That's the context that I want to talk to you about luxury and sustainability. So one of the big threats that we're facing, literally, is the impact of the Trump administration. I'm Canadian. I'm not American. I just want you to know that. That's really important. The Trump administration is busily rolling back regulations that protect the environment, as we know, and they're doing a lot of other things like the Paris Accord and all the other things that they're doing that are kind of crazy. So what that means is that 100 years ago, environmentalists began successfully regulating the fashion industry craze for those gorgeous ostrich gowns and ostrich boas and those beautiful ostrich headpieces. And because of this rollback in regulations that is happening by the Trump administration, are we on the eve of something that could once again put sort of an attack on the luxury industry? We have to be very careful about this context that we're living in. So that's why I'm talking to you about sustainable development, not just plain CSR. So the research problem, in my point of view, is that sustainability challenges all luxury firms. Management and luxury firms has to pay attention now to this context that we're working within. And how can research help luxury managers address this new challenge? Why is it interesting? Because we can capitalize as businesses, as luxury businesses, on which facets of sustainability policies positively or negatively impact brand image. And we know that our customers, as we've heard all day in this room, customers are sensitive to what the brands are doing, and you can have a positive or a negative opinion of a brand based on their relation to these kinds of issues. So let's provide some insight for adaptation in luxury firms around their business models when it comes to sustainability. Some firms are already incorporating sustainability into their strategic planning, and I'm not talking about the CSR stuff that's on your website. I'm talking about stuff that you're actually doing. So, for example, being very careful, like LVMH has a huge program, and it's not just on the website, it's what they actually put into practice, and that's because that comes from the head of the company all the way through all levels of the company. If you're using LED lighting in your stores, Gucci, for example, uses electric cars to make deliveries, but they join forces with other people, with other companies within the Kering group, and they pool their deliveries so that you don't have 10 cars on the road when you only need to have one. I mean, practical things that go all the way down the line. Every little bit counts, and that's what sustainability is within the luxury sector. So, from a consumer's point of view, which facets of a sustainability policy are really impacting the consumer? And that's going to affect how they view your brand and your brand image. Luxury has been defined a lot of different ways over the course of the day, but because I follow Jean-Louis Caperev and Jean-Louis Chandon around a lot, I'm using their definition really, which is luxury is, for my purposes for this research, is really the iconic global brands. So it's very high quality objects representing a sort of personal style, savoir-faire, excellent taste, long-lasting, heritage-oriented goods and services. And importantly, don't forget that luxury is desire. And we talk about luxury being the dream and the story. And that's why sustainable development is important to luxury, because you can't dilute the dream. Luxury that pollutes isn't luxury. And sustainable development, as I've taken some time to tell you about, is really it comes from that the 1987 Brundtland Commission definition, which is development that meets the needs of today without compromising the needs of future generations to meet their needs. So it's the interplay of social, economic, and environmental stability. So it's not just making a donation to a cause. That's not sustainable development. From the studies, especially Jean-Noël, remember that sustainability has become an element of quality that's expected by luxury customers. You don't buy stuff that you know is made by, slave hands and call it luxury. Luxury firms tend pivotally not to communicate a lot about their sustainability efforts. So what does that mean? Because if there's a reluctance to dilute your brand and your dream image, but you're really doing a lot about sustainability, and you're not communicating that to your customers, you may have a disconnect. So that's something that I wanted to look at in the study. So there's lots and lots of studies about sustainability and luxury. But now I'm taking it one step further because we're now in an era of sustainable development. So all these studies talk about the various aspects of sustainability and luxury, and they've been studied in the last 5 or 10 years very well and have given us a lot of insights. But what I can assure you is that for each of the aspects of sustainability in all of these recent studies, there is a corresponding SDG. Okay, so we're not just talking about elements of sustainability now, we're talking about how they relate to the Sustainable Development Goals, because that's the context in which all business operates. So we've distilled it down to the 9 common SDGs that are referred to in all of the studies. So it's not new, we've just sort of found which corresponding SDG relates to what topics have already been studied. And they apply to the luxury industry because they address global supply chains, resources, human rights, and the environment. Those are all things that are important to the luxury industry. We use institutional theory just briefly as a sort of a lens through which to look at this. But remember that there are opportunities for luxury firms to devise their sustainability strategies based on which facets of the policy impact the consumer. And because we're short of time and it's the end of the day, I'm not going to go through the great, huge amount of stuff that we've done in our study, except to say that we ran a quantitative and a qualitative study, and we had a really good sample. We were able to tap into luxury fan websites run by social media influencers who have vast fan bases. And so that's how we found our luxury consumers to ask questions of. We sought a sample of 300 people. We ended up with respondents in numbering 315 with some missing values, so a total usable sample of 285, which is a good size sample. So these are the participating websites from all over the world who helped us out. They're non-pay websites, but people who had an interest in promoting this idea because people globally are paying attention to sustainable development. So you can see the geographical distribution of where our respondents came from, all over the place. Actually, and some of the, from somebody in South America sent me their response in Portuguese, and I had to put it into Google Translate again. So I don't speak Portuguese, but we had respondents from all of these countries, from 28 countries. So we have a good, vast distribution of people all over the world who answered our survey. And so we made sure that they were luxury respondents through some screening questions. We asked them to rank 20 luxury brands, and we asked them to rank the Sustainable Development Goals. We wanted to see if there was some sort of a link between how they did both of those things. I'm not going to go into the more details because we're out of time. From the qualitative point of view, it was really interesting because we were able to get qualitative answers from the first 315 people about this question. Do you think that luxury brands have a duty when it comes to sustainable development? And the answer is absolutely yes, they do. So the respondents said, stop damaging the environment, you luxury brands. And how is that? We want you to focus on preserving resources, focus on sustainable and renewable materials, limit your production with toxic materials, teach sustainability to other industries, set an example because it will trickle down. Educate your consumers. So consumers are saying, tell us what you're doing about this sustainability thing because it's important to us. Nobody talks about that, but everybody says, this idea that, you're diluting the dream. Not so true to the luxury consumers. These are real luxury consumers. And they say, we want to know what you're doing. Tell us more. It affects how we view your brand. And support your employees. Pay fair wages. Get women in the boardroom. Have fair wages all the way through the piece. That's what luxury consumers are telling us that they want from luxury brands. I think we need to pay attention. And how they ranked brands, when we gave them 20 luxury brands to rank, Stella McCartney was ranked first in terms of perceived sustainability. Hermes, Cucinelli, Piana, Burberry, Bottega Veneta, Tiffany, Rolex, and Louis Vuitton. Top 10. And that's a lot of respondents saying that that's how they see them. So they look at these brands and they say, I perceive that these are sustainable brands. And it makes sense because you can see that LVMH is doing quite a bit to tell its customers about the kinds of things it's doing when it tells you a bit about the dream and the story. And when you go into Cucinelli or Bottega Veneta, you get the story. When you walk into any of these stores and you come upon a salesperson, they'll tell you a little bit about the heritage and the handmade quality and what makes this important. And it's not made with junk and it's not made with poison, and we're not ruining the environment, making this beautiful good. And that story, that dream, is getting through to the customer. So we have to keep that up as luxury brands, or not. And if we don't, we lose face and it affects our brand image. These luxury consumers were able to rank the Sustainable Development Goals. We gave them a list and we said, what do you think we gave them a list of those important 9 SDGs that I told you about, and they were able to determine what they thought was most important. Look at number 1, decent work for all. They have a sense of fairness about how these goods are made. They want you to make sure that wherever these materials are sourced from and however you're making these goods, that it's done in a fair way, and that the communities from which those rare raw materials come from, those people are treated fairly. So, is there a link between the ranking of the SDGs and the luxury brands? No. But there is an effect of sociodemographics when it comes to ranking global luxury brands. And there is a correlation between brand sustainability ranking and intention to buy and intention to recommend, but not to pay a premium. And so I had some more findings, but it's the end of the day, and so that's kind of where I want to leave you with, because we're at exactly where I'm supposed to be finishing now. But I wanted to give you the idea that we're past just plain old CSR. We're into an era of sustainable development, and there's a lot that does impact brand image in this regard. And thank you very much for listening.
Question, or it's editor.
Sorry, just have one question. It's very interesting, but then I don't know whether does it in the respondents, because I saw that you have a vast respondents, but I see that a lot of them are probably in Canada, in probably the United States. So I'm wondering, is it, I mean, from the respondents, are there any Asian contexts? Because why I ask this, because in Asia, it's less likely that we hear the customers coming back to tell us that they are concerned as to whether do you use child labor, do you have women in the board or something like that. It's more common in the US and
in Western countries.
Correct. Western
we had response, as I said, from 28 countries. So we had response, but we had more response from Canada because I'm Canadian,
sure.
So it was easier to spread the survey that way. But we did have a very broad cross section through Europe, and it would be interesting to be able to run this study and run those questionnaires more in different cultures to see, to see the difference in effect. But the bottom line is that all member nations of the UN, all the nations of the world, have bought into this idea that we have to do something about the planet and all of our responsibilities beyond just giving to charity. We have to have a top-down approach to being sustainable in everything we do, because it does affect the brand image.
Thank you very much, Judith.
Thank you.